Mitch McConnell went on Fox News recently, and he somehow managed to put every single far right-wing, hyper-conservative talking point into about like a 2-minute speech. I'm not kidding. Take a look.
Joining us tonight, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Mr. Leader, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
In the past few minutes, Bernie Sanders put out a statement saying that a President Bernie Sanders would get Medicare for all through. He's pushing for filibuster reform, says it would get 51 votes. Democratic senators, quote, need to be prepared to do what polls show that rank-and-file Democrats want, and that is a Medicare for all single-payer system. Your reaction? Your reaction to that?
Not as long as I'm majority leader. It ought to be called Medicare for none, because as the setup piece pointed out, 180 million Americans would lose the private health insurance many of them have negotiated for at work. Medicare itself, that current recipients have been paying into all these years, would be completely drained by adding all these additional people. If you want to turn America into a socialist country, this is the first step. That coupled, of course, with the Green New Deal, which would eliminate a whole lot of jobs. I think what we're seeing here is full socialism on display in the Democratic primaries for president. And even those who are skeptical about it, like Senator Klobuchar, are saying a public option. Well, that's not much different, because if you have a public option, I guarantee you the public option will also drive all the private insurance companies out of business. So look, this is a prescription for turning America into a Western European country.
Where's the GOP plan on health care?
Well, what we want to make sure everybody knows is that we're all in favor of covering pre-existing conditions, and that's really not endangered by the current litigation that's working its way through the courts. I'm all in favor of working on what should be called niche fixes to try to improve the current system. Obviously, Obamacare has entirely too high co-payments and deductibles. We ought to be working on something like that. There is a bipartisan effort underway in the Senate to try to get down the cost of prescription drugs. Those are the kinds of things that could actually pass. But I guarantee you, next year, what's going to be on display across this country is a debate about whether we want to turn America into a socialist country. Right. I never thought, by the way, that we'd be debating the virtues of capitalism in America in my lifetime.
You backed off last week, taking another run at trying to repeal and replace Obamacare. Did the president get too far over his skis there?
Well, look, we made that effort last Congress. It didn't work. Clearly, the Democratic House is not going to pass it. So we're not going to spend time in the Senate on things that have, literally no chance of becoming law.
I don't think there was a single 5-second segment of Mitch McConnell's speech there that had anything remotely correct. I haven't seen for a very long time someone throw so many different just complete false statements in so little time. It was just a very dense lie. Most Republicans, what they do is they'll stick around a lie and they'll hang around one talking point, but that was just talking point. And so I'm just going to break down every single thing he said there. So first off, the host there would just basically start off by saying, Bernie Sanders wants Medicare for all. Your response? Silence. And then he says again, your response? And then the camera shoots to Mitch McConnell and he says, well, not as long as I'm majority leader. It ought to be called Medicare for none. Oh my gosh. It was the worst delivery ever. He was trying to oh my gosh, right? He was trying to throw a huge diss, but the delivery was so bad. I didn't laugh. Did you? I didn't laugh. I looked at that and I was just I felt so uncomfortable after hearing that. It ought to be called Medicare for none. But it's not, Mitch. It's Medicare for all. It's Medicare for all for a reason, because it's Medicare for all. Jeez. First off, I understand why he's calling it Medicare for none, because he thinks we're going to just totally crash the Medicare system, even though every other developed nation has universal health care and Medicare for all, pretty much the equivalent of Medicare for all, because other countries don't have Medicare. But I understand like that's what his belief is. I don't know why he believes that, but let's just break down all these things that he says. He mentions in the beginning 180 million people would lose their health insurance that they negotiated for at work. It's like so guys, understand this. I'm a university instructor for mathematics. I have some students every once in a while that it's just like, dude, like I had one student, I said 2 + 3. And I got the answer -1. I'm not kidding. And I asked, no, 2 + 3, -1. That was a day I'll never forget. I remember being in my office hearing my student say that. And I thought to myself, what am I even doing? I'm surrounded right now. That's such a stupid argument that Mitch is making here. So right now we have 30 million people who are currently uninsured, meaning that if any of them get cancer or if any of them need any extended care that lasts longer than 3 days, they're not going to be able to pay for it and they're going to lose their care. So, for example, if you get cancer and you don't have health insurance, you can go to the hospital, maybe get diagnosed with cancer. Maybe they'll keep you for like 2 days, but then after that, they'll throw you in the streets because hospitals aren't required to keep you for more than like 2 or 3 days because that costs money and they're not going to take on that cost. But 100 million people would lose their health insurance that they negotiated for at work. So you're telling me, Mitch, that all these people fought really, really hard for health insurance. But the alternative that we're offering here is that we give health insurance to every single individual. No negotiation required whatsoever. All of those 180 million people, plus, by the way, the other, 150 million people that I think Mitch forgot to add in here, also get free health insurance. All of them get health insurance. No negotiation required. It's just, here you go. Here's a card. Take it wherever you want. You get health care. That's how it works in every other developed nation. But then he even has the audacity to say that that 180 million people will lose their health insurance that they negotiated for at work. So he just completely disregarded 150 million people, like half of Americans, which, by the way, probably a good chunk of my viewers, you guys who didn't negotiate at work for your health insurance. Obviously, Mitch McConnell doesn't care about you. And on top of that, like, why is your work paying for your health insurance? What does your work have anything to do with your health care? Why is it that if you get a job, that means that you can survive if you go to the hospital? What do those two things have anything to do with each other? Why, like, and then on top of that, like, if corporations had the choice to not pay for health insurance for you, they wouldn't. You know how we know that? Because before Obamacare, they weren't required to do that. But when Obamacare was passed, the law stated that if you have more than 50 employees, you would have to provide health insurance to your workers. And you have to pay a certain portion of it. And so Mitch McConnell wants to kind of take this back like 10 steps in, like, you know, archaic times, like before pre-World War I times. I'm not kidding about that. Like, it's understand that Mitch McConnell doesn't care about your Medicare. This guy has proposed bills in the Senate, budget plans that would effectively cut huge portions of Medicare. But then he has the audacity to say right after this that Medicare would be drained with Medicare for all. First off, two things. Number one, that's what Mitch McConnell has always wanted. Why are you fighting that? Why are you so opposed to that, Mitch? It sounds like you've done so many speeches on how Medicare should be drained. And all of a sudden he's like, I don't know why Medicare is going to be drained. I don't know. But on top of that, Medicare is not going to be drained because it's going to be funded. You increase the funding, you increase the people who are on health insurance. Everyone's on health insurance as a human right. And then the healthcare costs would be cut in half, just like every other developed nation. Every nation, 100% of the nations that have healthcare, free healthcare, have healthcare costs that are per capita GDP half as ours. around 9%, 10%, 8%. You never see anything beyond that or below that typically. He said Medicare for all is the first step into turning this country socialist. Two problems I have with that. First problem, socialism is the social ownership of the means of production. Medicare for all is a social intervention in a capitalistic, democratic society. By virtue of the fact that Medicare for all is a government program, it cannot be socialist. Open up a basic political theory textbook and you'll see that socialism is the social ownership of the means of production. No government involved. So many people get this wrong and it drives me nuts. And I understand, like, what drives me nuts, I guess even more so, is when Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, a lot of the modern day progressives who say, we shouldn't be so stuck on these terms and vocabulary. No, we should absolutely be clear about the vocabulary. Socialism doesn't have a government. If you have socialism, there's no government. Karl Marx, guys, read the book. Read the book. Basic political theory book if you want. Go to buy the Oxford political theory textbook where you can just go through and look at what socialism is. No government intervention whatsoever. It is the most libertarian political platform. Do I like it? Absolutely not. I do not like socialism. I like social democracy, which is two things: capitalism and a democracy. And the democracy is designed to develop two things: social and economic interventions that prevent capitalism from getting out of control. Like, for example, maybe we can have a military, a police force, firefighters. Those are DCS. Like, there's so many things that we can have that would protect us, that would allow for capitalism to not be completely out of hand. I mean, if you run an anarcho-capitalist society, there's no government interventions whatsoever, which Mitch McConnell would want because it's a free market. It's like the Turning Point USA logo, basically. It's absolutely insane because these people believe that, there should be a free market. There should be no intervention whatsoever. No free things. No police officers. No military. No free things. And then frequently they'll tout, well, it's not free because we pay it with our taxes. And then you say, well, that's kind of the same idea as Medicare for all, but whatever. Let's keep going. Green New Deal. Oh, yeah. There was two things. Medicare for all is the first step into turning this country socialist. So yeah, you got socialism wrong. But then on top of that, Medicare for all is the first step into turning this country socialist. So would you agree, Mitch, that every other developed nation is socialist? Wow, in virtue of the fact that they are developed nations, I would probably argue that we should be a socialist country. By that logic. Now, that's not socialism, like as I just explained, but he just basically gave a great reason why we should be socialists. If every other developed nation has Medicare for all, and supposedly Medicare for all is the first step into turning a country socialist, then by logic, every other developed nation is a socialist country. So what, Mitch? You want to be an underdeveloped nation? Is that what your goal is here? He says the Green New Deal would eliminate a lot of jobs. Not a typical talking point. This is the kind of guy that says that the Green New Deal, which by the way I have right here. This is the kind of guy. Mitch McConnell is the kind of guy that would say that the Green New Deal has things about cows farting and all these other things, which is absolutely hilarious because this is the House resolution proposal, the one that went to Congress, the one that we should be judging, the one that is incredibly sound and amazing. He said also, he talked about Amy Klobuchar, I think it was. He referenced Amy Klobuchar and talked about how Amy Klobuchar wants a public option. But a public option would be bad because it drives people away from private insurance. So let me explain this talking point because half of these talking points explain why you should have Medicare for all. I don't think Mitch McConnell understands that, but understand this from the get-go. Full disclosure, I'm not in favor of a public option. I'm in favor of Medicare for all. There is a difference. So you have people like Andrew Yang, who want a public option Medicare for all system. I want just a straight up Medicare for all system. I don't think people should be able to opt out of Medicare, simply because I think that what people are going to end up doing is they're going to say, I don't want to put any skin in the game. I want to risk it. And then they cross their fingers and then they end up dying because they make a really dumb decision like that. I don't think anyone should die because they made poor decisions, because that's almost effectively the same equivalent thing as the death penalty, which I oppose as well. So the public option is bad because it drives people away from private health insurance. So first off, the public option concept, the public option policy platform is still way better than what we have right now. Mitch, if people would leave to go to the public option, why is that? Why would people switch over to the public option? I'll wait. Like, he's saying, like, it's so bad because it's going to hurt private insurance companies. Everyone's going to go over to the public option. Wow, why are people going to the public option? I mean, capitalism, right? It's a public option. You don't have to, you just have to pay the cost of the health insurance. You have to buy into it. It's about half the cost because the government is twice as efficient as other health insurance providers. So if people are going to the public option, then what does that say about private health insurance? You kind of just made a point. You just kind of dug your own grave there, Mitch. He said, Obamacare has, this is hilarious. He said, Obamacare has too high copays and deductibles. Obamacare is not a health insurance. It is a policy. No one got Obamacare. That's not what happened, Mitch. It's not like people got Obamacare. No one got Obamacare because Obamacare is a public policy. It's a bill that was signed. It's not something that we give to people and say, here, get some health care because, here's a stack of like 500 papers or whatever. Go get some health care. That's not how Obamacare works. It's not something that has copays and deductibles. But he literally just said, like, Obamacare has too high copays and deductibles. You mean Medicare, maybe, or maybe, which is hilarious because Medicare is free. Medicaid, oh yeah, that's free too. Let's see. What are you talking about, Mitch? Now, yes, I understand that Obamacare is not perfect. It is definitely like the smallest step we could have possibly made in the right direction. And I'm not exaggerating about that either. I don't think you could have made a smaller step with Obamacare, but nonetheless, it's not an insurance policy that you purchase. It's not I don't know what this guy's thinking. He advocated at the end something that was kind of interesting, and I really hope that he goes off of this sort of rhetoric, because if he does, he's going to lose come 2020. He said, people are looking and they need modest fixes. I don't think Mitch McConnell understands, but we're in a time period right now where modest fixes, which is the concept of incrementalism. Incrementalism is the theory that we just need very small changes at a time, and eventually we go towards the right direction. Eventually we can get to Medicare for all, but we're just going to make small changes. And so Obamacare was an example of incrementalism. That was my phone. Sorry. I think I was off rep. People need modest fixes. Right now, people don't want incrementalism. They want radical changes. That's why they wanted Trump, because he was so radical and right-wing, and Hillary Clinton wasn't. And Hillary Clinton only won the primaries because of the DNC. So that's why Trump won. And so if right now Trump is saying promises made, promises kept, as if America's already great. And this whole thing about people just need modest fixes, as if like America's pretty great, we just need to make some little tweaks. If they run on that platform, the Democrats will win in a heartbeat. I don't care who you put up. And that's saying a lot, because I mean, we have some terrible Democratic candidates. I mean, I could basically name almost everyone except 2 people. Three off the top of my head. Andrew Yang, Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard. Pretty much everyone else I have some huge problems with somewhere. And that includes Elizabeth Warren, guys. At the very end, he also said, we're not going to try to pass anything in the Senate regarding healthcare because we don't have the House. So right now, the Senate is controlled by the Republicans and the House is controlled by the Democrats. And what he just said is that he's not even going to attempt bipartisanship in any way whatsoever because the House is Democrat. And I understand this. I'm totally okay with that. I don't mind because I don't like the concept of bipartisanship. I don't think the country wants bipartisanship because bipartisanship just simply means centrism, and not centrist as what independents want, but centrist as in status quo centrism. In my view, I think that is a very, very dangerous direction for this country. I don't think that's a great idea. But like on top of that, he made a really good point at the very end to suggest that we shouldn't have a 2-house legislative branch. Having a 2-house legislative branch is a terrible idea. Like every other country, what they have is they have a parliament. A parliament. And if you have a 2-house system, a Senate and a House, then you need control of both plus the executive branch if you want to get anything done. And not even that's true. Take, for example, 2017. Sorry, it was more 2017, 2018, when the Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. The only bill that was passed, the only one, was Trump's tax cuts. And those tax cuts were given to big corporations, and you had a lot of Democrats vote for it. And it was more or less bipartisanship because of the establishment in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So this is a great time to talk about direct democracy. So if you're not familiar with direct democracy, I 100% support direct democracy. Just basically means that you get rid of the legislative branch. And the legislative branch becomes you and me and everyone. The concept is that if we want to make laws, why have representatives who represent us when you can just represent yourself? Who knows more what you want than you? So that's a direct democracy. I 100% support that. And I think Mitch McConnell just gave a really good reason as to why we should have a direct democracy. But of course, Mitch McConnell is in favor of things like, the Electoral College and everything because it greatly favors him. He understands that if we had mob rule or whatever he wants to refer to it as, he would be kicked out of office in a heartbeat.